You have to remember this comic book. My partner Steven Fischler sold this Action comic book to Nicolas Cage in 1996 for what was then a record $150,000. 4 years later, Nick was having a Christmas party at his home, and he had all the comic books in these beautiful shadow boxes. They were hung up on his wall, and he unlocked them to show his friends his collection. And I think somebody in the catering crew or a guest walked off with the Action #1 and several other copies of from his collection.
Wow.
We got a very hectic call the next day from Nick about the theft, and my partner Steven flew out to California to help with the investigation. Steven actually said to Nick at this point, said, "Your books are stolen. Sooner or later, somebody's going to try to sell them, and when they do, we're going to get them back for you." Fast forward to 11 years later, we're sitting in our office, and a guy calls up and says, "Hey, I have a client who just bought a storage unit here in Los Angeles, and he found an Action Comics #1 in it and would like to sell it. He wants $1 million. Could you send us a picture?" I said, "Yeah, I'll call you guys back in a couple of hours." He wouldn't leave his number. He just said, "We'll call you back." And we're sitting there going, "Wait, no, no." And he hung up the phone, and we're sitting there on pins and needles waiting for him to call back. And sure enough, he does. And he emails us a picture of the book. And the second my partner, Steven, saw that picture, he knew it was the book. It has certain identifiable marks on it that you know it's only that copy has. It's like a fingerprint. Calls up Detective Horisic, who was on the case 11 years before, and calls up Nick and tells them that we've found the book. Flies out to LA the next day to do a buy with the seller. He and Detective Horisic meet at the police precinct, and the detective says to him, said, "Look, we're going to go. When you know it's the book, you just look over at me and say, 'Hey, this is a really nice book.' I'll then introduce myself as Detective Horisic and tell them what's going on. If anything goes wrong, if anybody pulls a gun, if anything goes crazy, don't be a hero," he says to him. "Don't be a hero. Hit the ground. I'll take care of it." To which my partner said, "No problem." So the next day comes, they go to this meet at this industrial park in Simi Valley in California, in Los Angeles, and they meet with a guy named Mark Bellella, who was on a show called Storage Wars at the time. And the guy who owns the book is standing behind him. They didn't even have it in a bag. It was just in like an office folder. And it's like the holy grail, you're opening up, and it's almost like something out of Pulp Fiction with the gold, so they look at it, and Steve, within a second of looking at it, realizes it's Nick's book and tells the detective, and the detective introduces himself. And this guy who was standing behind Mark Bellella, who owned the book, was so full of life and so excited he's going to get $1 million payday. And as soon as the detective gave him his business card, it was like all the color drained out of this guy's face. And it
Wow.
was just went from the best day of my life to the worst day of my life. And he stuck to his story that he bought it in a storage unit. Um, was that true? We don't know. I personally don't think so, but they couldn't shake him. And so what ended up happening from there is we recovered the book. Nick worked things out with the insurance company. We brought the book to auction within the year. And it ended up selling back then in 2011 for what was a record price of $2.2 million. And I remember this auction. It was really exciting. So it stayed in that collection. And now, 2011 to 2026. And we then sold it for $15 million. It's not only the highest price ever sold for a comic book, it's actually the biggest profit ever made on a single comic book in the history of comic collecting. So that's the story,
Yeah.
guys.